Thank you for turning to page 121. Welcome back to page 121. Today I want to talk about a book that is near and dear to my heart and has been since 1981. This is the excellent Fiend Folio, published by TSR, as I said, in 1981. Fiend Folio was the second monster manual, if you don't count Deities and Demigods. The fun of Fiend Folio was it was the book with all the weird monsters. It was edited by Don Turnbull of Games Workshop. Yes, that Games Workshop. That Games Workshop started out as the TSR licensee in Great Britain. And they published White Dwarf magazine, which at the time had a ton of articles about D&D, Traveller, any other games that were around at the time. So it can be a real good resource. The older issues of White Dwarf can be a real good resource if you're looking for older, obscure things. But the reason I mention all this is a lot of the monsters in this book came from across the pond. They came from Great Britain. GW was the licensee in Great Britain. They came up with a feature in White Dwarf magazine that they used to publish called the Fiend Factory, where they encouraged readers to send in their scary monsters. The readers would send them in, and if they were good enough, they'd get published. Well, most of these creatures found their way into Fiend Folio, 128 pages of goodness. I love this book. I had a lot of fun DMing out of this book. I still do. There are still many monsters that are featured in this book that actually never made it into any second or third edition that I have, but still show up in my game all the time. I'm on the page right now with the Elemental Princes of Evil. It was really good having these guys called out entirely. The Elemental Princes of Evil were new to me when I bought this book, but of course they've played different roles in D&D through the years. So it was pretty exciting to have these and have the idea that elementals had lords. And then, of course, you have the Drow, who make their actual appearance here. I realized they were in Descent to the Depths of the Earth and Vault of the Drow, but this is the first time they're in one of the hardcover books. This book gave us so much goodness. It gave us the Kelpie. It gave us Lava Children, one of my personal favorites. Look at the goofy grin. The Lizard King. Lizard King appeared a lot in my game as well. An 8 hit dice creature that lorded over Lizardmen. Lizardmen were one of my favorite lower level encounters in all of D&D. So it was great to have a Lizard King. Some of the other monsters that made their appearances here that are still around today are the Death Knight, Carried Columns. Louth, of course, appears in this book. Githyanki and Githzeri, they make their first appearance in this book. This was a big deal when these guys came out. There's the Grell, there's the Githzeri, and there's the Githyanki. Whole adventures have been done around the Githyanki and the Githzeri and their society after having been freed from their enslavement at the hands of the Beholders, or tentacles of the Beholders. Githyanki and Githzeri are very important in this book, and believe me, popped up in a lot of campaigns that I was in and that I DM'd when this book was new. Sons of Caius make their appearance here. That led to a huge adventure path in Dragon Magazine a few years, or Dungeon Magazine, my apologies, Dungeon Magazine a few years ago for 3rd edition. Since that's all Greyhawk stuff, that's very translatable to what we do here. I've read that adventure path and I really enjoy it. The Goofy Adherer. Looks like a mummy, it acts like a mummy, but it's not. It's made of glue. You hit it and you stick. Once it's dead, you still stick. You can't get your sword free. I love the Adherer. The Fiend Folio was also known in our group as the Friend Folio. Sometimes we just get a little weird and call it the Friend Folio. So this book was looked upon a lot of people as kind of the outsider monster manual. It wasn't looked at as a monster manual that, even though it was official TSR, I knew a lot of people that had a lot of disdain for this book. I never understood it myself. I'll take 100 plus new monsters any day of the week. And until Monster Manual 2 came out in 1983, this was the only other book we got. You had the Monster Manual come out in 77. You had Fiend Folio come out in 81. Monster Manual 2 come out in 83. That was the pool of monsters we drew from, other than White Dwarf and, of course, Dragon Magazine. So, again, I have a lot of fondness for this book. The treasure types are a little different than in the DMG here. The random monsters, of course, include the monsters in this book. And then some magic item table for character encounters. And then just level monster summoning charts. Just all kinds of goodness in this book. It was a very strong addition to the D&D line. At the time, the hardcover books were, in order of publication, the Monster Manual, the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master Guide, Deities, Demigods, and this guy. This was the 5th book in the series, and very important to our campaign. I also was into AD&D approximately. I've been playing about a year and a half when this book came out, and I was playing AD&D for about a year of that time when this came out. So this was my first Monster Manual that came out after I had gone over to AD&D, or having started originally in original D&D, and then, of course, the Holmes Blue box set. So, again, I love this book. I don't agree with people that think it was one of the goofier books. It gave us so many monsters that still appear to this day, including the Hook Horror, which features prominently in at least one of the Underdark novels with Drizzt Do'Urden. It's just a fun book to have. Gave us a few new types of giants. There's some dragons in here, the Addercap. And not all of these, of course, came from Great Britain. A lot of these were monsters that in one form or another had already been around in D&D. But it just breathed a whole new life into the monsters for you. And it gave you an opportunity to throw some stuff that maybe everybody at the table wasn't really familiar with. I use this book a lot in my campaigns and was able to keep my players guessing quite a bit because of it. This is the copy that I actually bought in 1981. It's seen some love, but not real bad. I've got a little crunched corner here. It's about the worst of it. Otherwise, this book has stayed in really good shape. And I'm a little surprised by that, because this book was used at least as much as all the others in my DMing. I'm just surprised that this one's held together so well. Fiend Folio is actually available on DriveThruRPG for $10 for the PDF, and I think it's only $12 if you want a softcover hard copy of this and the PDF. So that's actually quite a good deal. Again, I don't work for DriveThruRPG. I just like that they make so much of this stuff available to you. So I do recommend this book completely. If it's not one you're familiar with, absolutely get your hands on a copy and surprise your players today. That's all I've got for page 121 today. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Well, that closes the book on another episode of page 121. Please leave your comments below, and if you enjoyed what you saw, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.